Okay, boom.
This is the pilot.
Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, when you're ready.
This is the pilot for Over the Fence for Glengarry TV. And our first interviewee is someone I've known for a number of years, since 2017. That's Mike MacGillivray from Kirkhill. And I'm going to give you a bit of a preamble and give you a visual context from where his farm is and what he's doing. But anyway, let me start here. Against the odds, some farmers are turning back to the past with new ideas of how to survive in the age of petrochemical farming. And Mike MacGillivray's one. Mike MacGillivray is back on the farm where he grew up in Kirkhill. He's the 7th generation MacGillivray to work the 196 acres overlooking Kirkhill's two churches, which is St. Columba Presbyterian Church, and on the other side, the north side, I believe, right,
yep,
is Kirkhill United Church. Now, the Kirkhill Farms is located on Glengarry Road. Sometimes we call that Lagan Road, and Concession 7, I believe,
yep,
right? Yeah,
7.
And it's just west of Old Military Road. So when I start describing it, if you've driven by there anytime, you'll know where it is, because it's on a rise. It's a hilltop farm, and if you drove by it last week, you would have seen a herd of rusty-colored, well-muscled, shiny cattle, and they're not Herefords. I know Herefords with the white faces. What breed is that, Mike?
They're lowline Angus and lowline Angus crosses that we're using. So more grass genetics is because that's what we're focused on.
By grass genetics, what do you mean?
So everything we do is grass fed. So we've been very selective about the genetics we bring in to have something that can fully develop on just grass alone. So.
Just grass, no finishing at the end.
No.
Now, Mike's ancestors were originally granted 100 acres in 1796. Today, Mike and his partner Cora farm just under 200 acres because a long time ago, the MacGillivrays bestowed 4 acres to the United Church, Kirkhill United Church.
And the right to draw water from the spring in the field. They still have that right today. The spring's not there anymore.
But nevertheless,
they had the right to draw water from the spring for horses.
Well, that was important. The church and its cemetery are just adjacent, just next to the lane that you drive up to the hilltop farm, known for its beautiful vistas and sunsets. And this is so true. When I first met your grandfather, he told me about the magnificent sunsets.
Yeah, we get beautiful sunsets.
Yeah.
That's one thing we do get.
So as you're driving up this lane, on every telephone pole, or just about every telephone pole, there are birdhouses. And there are also signs saying, slow down to 10 kilometers an hour to not kick up the dust. When you reach the top, there's Mike's grandparents' farmhouse. This is that's on the west side, and that's late Bill and Janet MacGillivray. And behind the old house is the farm's old barn, and it's still in use. Now, the farm, there are 2 farms there, and Mike is farming both of them. His father's farm, which was adjacent further east, right, was another 200 acres, and that's where Mike and Cora live today. And out behind are newer barns and outbuildings. And every December, the MacGillivrays, this is the 3rd year last year. How many people? 500 people, right?
Yeah, 500-600 last year.
Only the 3rd installation. And they have this wonderful free public event. And it's an old-time family Christmas in the stable with local vendors and markets and hot food and fire pits outside, and the herd of cattle was just next by, and you could go in and have your picture taken with the best Santa I have ever seen in Glengarry.
He is awesome.
He's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, is he a professional Santa?
He is Santa.
He is Santa.
He is Santa.
Thank you. It's a beautiful day up there, and the last time I was up there, people were gathered around fire pits. It was the 14th of December or something, And it was just such a good feeling up there with the animals and the donkeys, allowing people to pet their noses. And it was just a beautiful day. But to get back to Kirkhill United Church, there's a red granite gravestone up at the top of that cemetery. And that's where Mike's grandfather, Bill MacGillivray, was laid to rest. I'll read this now. William Howard Bill MacGillivray, he was known as, oh, he's known as something else too, was born in 1917 and died in 2007. His wife, Janet Alice, born Nixon, preceded him in 2002 after 57 years of marriage. Mr. MacGillivray was affectionately known to all as One-Armed Bill, and I say affectionately because he was called that out of respect, because he's a man who lost his arm as a teenager, age 16, to cancer, and he went on to farm as well as any two-armed man. At 80 in 1998, he was still going strong. He went strong for a number of years after that, too. And in the fall, when the snow fell, he was still out in the bush every day cutting firewood, as well as the lumber that he needed to build fine furniture, which was a hobby he took up late in life because he never had the time, as you told me, Mike, to do that. And he was a very fine furniture carpenter. It was beyond just a hobby. Throughout his life, Bill MacGillivray modified tools to use with one arm. He altered and improvised chainsaws using the brake handle of a bicycle, and he'd hold on to that at the top and control the gas with that. It was amazing. And also his shed was filled with, his wood shop was filled with all kinds of modified tools that he made. Anyway, he went on to build 100 cedar chests, 8 hutches, 12 deacon benches, and 4 roll-top desks, and many other pieces of furniture. And as I said before, this was a hobby that he took up in older age. When he was asked how he learned to modify the tools to farm with, he used to point to his head. "You simply use this," he'd say. Anyway, it's taken some time to get around to our guest, Mike, but I think we had to lay some groundwork. Mike returned to Glengarry and the MacGillivray farms after his father died in 2016. Mike had traveled the world in his job and witnessed how the principles of regenerative agriculture, I better say that again, regenerative agriculture, are used elsewhere. And he remembered how his grandfather farmed the old way, what we now call regenerative organic. The East 100 acres were farmed conventionally. That was his father's farm, which means with petrochemically based. Today, the entire 196 acres has been converted back to the future, as Mike describes it, by using regenerative farming principles combined with permaculture, which Mike will describe later. So today, Kirkview grows chickens, pigs, turkeys, goats, and beef cattle. There may be more. And sheep,
Don't
yes.
forget the sheep.
Sheep, of
They'll
course.
get mad.
Yeah, they'll be. And donkeys and a red heeler dog and some other good farm dogs provide security, and you need it up there because, as everyone in Glengarry knows, is that we have a surplus of coyotes. The farm uses only locally sourced organic feed for their animals because, as Mike puts it, you are what you eat. They're also growing vegetables, and there's a shop on the farm that sells meat and produce they grow, as well as the maple syrup that Mike's making that comes from his grandfather's, Bill MacGillivray's sugar bush. So that's it. I'll ask you now, too, because I've said so much. But, Mike, when did you actually take over the 2 farms? What year was that?
2018, I think it was.
2018.
17, 18 is the time frame.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about what you did after you graduated from Glengarry District High School, right?
Yeah.
Because that leads into how is it that you've traveled the world. So let me ask you about what your trade training was and what you did.
Sure. Yeah, I went to Northern College. It's up in Kirkland Lake, Ontario, which was an experience all of its own. Moving from rural Eastern Ontario to a northern community was a bit of a different lifestyle. But spent 3 years up there in a welding engineering technology program. And then upon graduating, and back up a little bit, I was kind of discouraged from getting into farming by my dad because he'd gone through the 80s, which was a very tough time for farmers. So he kind of discouraged me from getting into farming. He wanted me to do something else. So welding was something that I was, there was a teacher, Mr. Williams, was our shop teacher at Glengarry, and he was actually, I think he sent quite a few, I know 3 or 4 people that he sent up there are convinced to go up to there to take this, and they've all done very well for themselves. But so I ended up in the welding world. Moved to Southern Ontario. Lived in Southern Ontario for approximately, I guess it would be 10 years, a little over 10 years, and then ended up moving to the U.S. I had an opportunity. The company I was with, they moved me to the U.S., and that's when I started traveling internationally. In the oil and gas sector.
In the oil and gas sector.
Yep.
And what were you doing for them?
So basically anything oil related. So at first I was doing offshore oil rigs, petrochemical facilities, pipelines. But then in the last couple of years was focused just on pipelines. So, but spent a lot of time in Russia, China, the Middle East, Europe, Southeast Asia. So.
How many years was that sojourn?
That was about 7, 8 years. I did that, and then it was just it's a lot. It's very when you spend all your time in an airplane seat, it's a little.
And what were you doing? Were you still welding yourself, or you?
No. I was in basically looking after our large customers. So. Was in sales to start, and then into the general manager's role, and had sales teams across the world that worked with me. And so,
did you have to teach people how to set up a welding shop?
No, I was more basically to help design new welding products and stuff like that, and to help customers. So, like one of our big customers was PetroChina, so we did work with them, Sinopec, Gazprom in Russia, Transneft. Shell, Esso, the major corporations are who we dealt with.
And I think you had a lot of travel to developing countries as well, because I remember you telling me that you observed, for instance, in Vietnam, I think it was, regenerative farming, or what was it? Another country?
Well, I seen it in China actually, because I spent a lot of time in rural China.
Oh. And
I didn't visit the tourist areas any place I went. I may have passed through there, but that was never in the tourist area. But as you've seen in like China, like there were like seed saving, right? We're talking about seed saving today. They've done that for generations and generations and generations. You've seen them drying corn on the roof of their houses and out in their courtyards. They were drying their corn and or wheat or whatever grains they were growing, and so it was very interesting to see. And they were doing multi-tiered, having chickens and stuff, everything. So it was kind of neat to see. Yeah.
And did anything that you saw in China, for instance, remind you of some of the? I have to ask you first. How old are you?
50. That's a good question. 53.
53. So I'm 73.
54.
So, but we both witnessed old-time farming.
Yeah.
With mix,
or just at the end of it.
Just
anyways.
at the end of it.
Yeah. The transition of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you start thinking in your mind when you noticed the methods of farming and technology of farming in China?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that just the health. The people were very healthy and because they were eating very local, right? Like they weren't eating a lot of processed foods. They were eating a lot of simple products, but fresh, local. So I think that was one of the things that opened my eyes, and because of the lifestyle I was leading, and I was starting to have some health issues, I decided to explore more into this. So it kind of opened the door for me, and then I started looking into it, and then found a bunch of folks in the U.S. that do regenerative on larger scales. There's Joel Salatin was one of the ones, and I actually went to his farm
Oh, you did, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
What was that before you came back?
Yeah, yeah, before I came back.
Oh, so it was a growing interest then.
Yeah, it was a growing interest. So I wanted to see it firsthand. It's that old seeing is believing thing, right?
Can you say something about Joel? Because some people might not know who he is.
Yeah, he's a farmer in Virginia. He's regenerative. He has multiple enterprises, but he's all about building soil health. And he's very good for convincing young folks that they can get into farming, because the way he does it, the methods he uses, the systems he uses are low capital, so they can afford to get into it. They don't have to, they don't have to own land. They can do it on rented land or leased land. Chicken tractors, a Salatin chicken tractor is a thing. And
what is that?
So it's actually just a mobile cage, right?
Or it's kind of like what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've copied some of his stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but it's really low cost, low capital agriculture, right? So you're spending more money on the animals than you are on the building they're in, right? That's the idea. Like, so you don't have that large overhead that you have to pay off, right?
Right. And just like Joel, his name is Saladin, by the way. You too are teaching people.
Yeah, he has an internship program, which kind of gave us a little bit of inspiration. So we have Wolfers that come, which is a worldwide opportunity on organic farms, which is people that come for whatever type of duration they want. It could be a couple of weeks, could be a couple of months. They'll come and stay with you, and they work on your farm and learn about different things that they want to learn
and
about.
you've had that for a couple of years.
Yep, we've had it for a couple of years now.
And they've come from where? What countries?
Germany, Brazil, France, Netherlands. So yeah, it's been very it's beneficial because you get to experience different cultures.
Well, of course.
So I look at it as now is that I get to travel without having to leave home.
You're the arm tractor. Well, actually, the tractor traveler.
Yeah, exactly.
There's another program currently up at Kirkview. You have some. I don't know what they are. Are they interns or what is that program?
So it's the Canadian Summer Student Program, and so they're basically these are farm apprentices. So they're learning about farming. They're young folks that really don't have any background in farming. Oh. One of them has a little bit, but they don't have a lot of background in farming, so that gives them the exposure to it. Because the challenge we have today is, a couple generations ago, most people were exposed to a farm, right? They grew up on it, or they had their grandparents were farmers, or they had an uncle or something along that. But we are now so many generations removed. There's people who have no connection to a farm whatsoever. Yeah. And so this spring I was part of a program where it was a mentorship thing, where we went into the local high schools and talked about. So I went in and talked about farming, obviously. And it was extremely eye-opening to see in our local high school here. Though there was probably, I think it was about 18 students I interacted with. There was only one that was from a farming.
My goodness.
There was one from a homestead, and one had an uncle, but they just didn't have any exposure. And we're in a farming community. Like, people identify this as a farming community. But here you have students, and they have no exposure. There was an interest level, though. There was an interest level. There was they were inquiring about how would we learn more, right? And so
and the interns that you have up there now working with you, how many are there right now?
So we have two different programs, right? So this is Canada Summer Student Jobs, which we're partnered with Cause Roots Community Project on that. But we also do internships where we actually just set a custom program with, we have a young couple that are with us that wanted an intensive program, so they're actually staying with us, and they live with us. So
where are they from?
From Montreal, actually.
Montreal,
yeah, they wanted to escape the city. They want to get out, want to learn how to raise their own animals and grow their own food, and there's the challenge we have now in our community is, where do you get an agricultural education?
True enough.
Right,
so agricultural colleges.
You have McDonald College, which now I understand is harder and harder to get into, just because of some of the challenge with the French language law. aspect. So they're forcing the students to take testing, and it's very difficult for them to pass that, even though the whole program's in English. So that's a bit of a challenge. But all of our local agricultural colleges are gone, right? We had Alfred, we had Kempville, they're gone. Well, even in the end, we had Guelph was in Kempville, but that's gone now as well.
Why is that?
I think it's just the large farms. I think that this whole drive to get bigger and bigger and bigger, there's less and less opportunities, right? And so I think that's a lot to do with it. You know, these large farms, you go down, you talked about Lag and Glenelg, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go down Lag and Glenelg, there's still quite a few dairy farms on Lag and Glenelg, right? But there's probably only a quarter of what there used to be, right? Or maybe even less. But, you know, each 100-acre farm, so this is what I see is that there used to be that each 100-acre farm was able to sustain 3 generations at once. Right? So they had the kids, the parents, and the grandparents were all living on that farm.
Yeah.
That farm also had the capability for expansion. It usually was able to provide for those families as well as the offspring to be able to set them up to go start farming somewhere else, either adjacently or somewhere else, right? So we've lost that. That's gone, right? And you know, there's a lot of factors that are coming into play on this, but you know, this corporate investment in farmland is driving the price up, right? Like they're just speculators, and their only concern is they really don't care. So I don't, you know, there's large corporations that are doing it. I don't call them farmers. They say they're a large corporate farm. It's not. They're a large corporate mining company. They're mining the topsoil. And you can see it when you drive around. You see the soil's dead. Like, there's no life in the soil.
I see that. You mentioned Glenegg Road, Lagan Glenegg Road. That's not all going for animal feed or fodder. It's going for what is it? What are all those soybean? Are they making ethanol out of that?
Well, some of the corn. Well, we have an ethanol plant locally, so some of the corn will go for ethanol. I think it's about 40% in the North American market. 40% of the corn goes into that. So. And then there's a lot of the soy. So some of the soy goes into animal feed and stuff like that. But
well, that's good.
But at the end of the day, the challenge we have is, you know, you take a look at the local community that was closest to us was Dalkeith, right? And you talked about my grandfather. My grandfather used to go there on Friday nights to play pool.
Oh yes, I remember that little. When I first moved here, it was still open.
Yeah, and he was, for a one-armed man, he was a hell of a pool player.
Too.
Yeah, so. But that community used to have a post office. It used to have a bakery. It used to have a sawmill. It used to have 2 feed mills, a gas station, 2 grocery stores.
Train stopped,
2 feed mills. Like it was a thriving little community, right? But you had all these farms feeding it, right?
Yes.
And all these farm families feeding it, but they're just not there anymore. They're just gone.
I'll touch on this, but in terms of corporations, you know, or index funds or whatever they are, investing in land speculatively, what kind of problem does you mentioned it before, but what does that set up for the soil and for the land here?
Well, so you're exporting. So most of them are based. Most of the products they produce are export based. So you take a look at it. You're exporting your minerals out of your community, right? Because those crops are being exported out. It's not like the crops are being utilized in the community. A lot of them are for export. So you have that occurring, right? And so, but the dollars are getting exported as well, right? So you think about it, all the input costs for that.
Yeah.
All that is all being exported as well. So very few dollars of that crop stays in North Glengarry, right? And so you have to take a look at it from that point of view. Is like once you start taking a look at all the inputs, all the equipment, right? Do you know of any tractor manufacturers in North Glengarry? No, right? And especially not ones that produce 600 horsepower tractors, right?
Yes.
So like and it's limiting the opportunities for young farmers because they just can't get in. They just can't. There's no way for, unless they start to look at what we're doing. And because with this way, there is I truly believe that, using regenerative methods, finding land, and there's different ways to find land, either through lease agreements, partnerships, rental, that they can get started, start to build their capital, eventually get their own piece of property, and but at the same time contribute to the community, right? Because there's more of those dollars stay in the community.
And whoops, I lost my track here.
I have that effect.
It was so interesting. So they would be renting. I got it back. They would be renting land that possibly had been used, and Roundup had been spread, and all the other inputs that you have to do for commercial farming like that, large farming. So how long would it take for them to restore that soil, and how would they proceed to amend and improve that soil?
So I have first-hand experience in that, because our own property, that was the case for it, right? And so it takes time, right? So for certified organic, it's basically 3 years. It's a 3 years transition, but you need to get animals. So regenerative agriculture is basically 6 principles, and integrating livestock is one of the key principles of it. So getting livestock back onto the land is one of the, all the soil that we have around here was built by animals.
Yes.
Right? Again, I mentioned that every one of those dairy farms, those dairy farms, they used to put the cattle out on pasture, right? And that's what was building the topsoil, right?
Yes.
So, having, switching our system, so now that we're in this degradation mode is I don't know how much we can do with that, right? Where I think we get to the point where it's not really soil, it's just dirt that is a growing medium, right? As long as it will hold roots, then
that's right. And everything's added to it, or
synthetically added,
and the fertilizer and everything is all artificial. I'm kind of jumping subjects here, but I notice another tendency here for them to cut down the hedgerows. And I
get rid of all the trees.
Those hedgerows were very important. First, they were continuous pathways for various nature,
livestock corridor, wildlife corridors.
And for the birds as well. But I'm astounded how many hedgerows have come down. What do you think about hedgerows?
Well, I think they're important. We're putting them back in. We've planted over 10,000 trees.
And what program did you use to plant all those trees?
So we've worked with the Raisin River Conservation Authority, as well as ALICE.
What's that?
ALICE, Alternative Land Use Services. ALICE, they're a great organization. The conservation is great. The Raisin River Conservation Authority is great to work with as well. And we've had some programs with the Ontario Soil Crop Association as well. So there is opportunities out there. You just have to have the mentality that you don't need to farm every square inch of your land. You got to leave a little bit for nature. So and if you take a look at it, we've had people do bird studies.
Oh, talk about that. That's fascinating. It was a woman.
A professor from Concordia, and she's done that, and she was able to identify 53 unique species on our farm. Some of them were shoreline birds, which you typically don't see inland like this, but we were getting them there. So
now the other half of the farm, that 100 acres, was farmed by your father Jimmy, and that was done petrochemically.
My grandfather used some too, but he was more Scottish about it. He used it more sparingly, I think.
Have you noticed any improvements, or did she notice any improvements in terms of the how vigorous nature is on that 100 acres?
Well, I think it's over that we didn't really distinguish between the two, just in general. So you'll find there's a lot of bugs, right? We have a lot of bugs. So if you take a bike and ride back the lane, you're going to be eating bugs. You're spitting bugs out of your teeth. It was interesting one day because I actually did that. I was back the lane and I was getting hit by bugs. And then I was out on the Lagan Glenelg Road and was driving east, and I didn't have any bugs.
No.
You remember the years whenever you had to stop at the gas station,
Oh yes.
clean
Yeah.
off your windshield.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to do
No,
that anymore.
I have observed that
So-
as well. It was a big thing.
And so that part of the ecosystem, that's your base. Your base is your, the bugs and everything that feed the birds, and if you don't have that, it's
What's the name of that professor from Concordia? Her name is
Ann Davidson.
Ann Davidson.
Ann Louise Davidson. Yeah.
Is she coming back this year?
Yeah, she's around all the time. Actually, she's taking a real interest in the farm, and what we're doing, and so she's actually looking at education and regenerative agriculture and regenerative education, and so basically to figure out how we can work together, and we've worked together on several projects. The cool thing is we brought students out that have, again, no exposure to farms, bring them out, get them exposure, and I think that's the big thing is just so people have an idea that it is an opportunity for them, right? To see, to get out, to experience the animals, to experience what goes on a farm, at least a farm of our style.
Yeah.
So.
And these students that came out were from Concordia, from Montreal,
Yes,
I believe.
correct,
So
yep.
they were, fully.
Yeah, they came the train. They brought the train. We picked them up in Alexandria.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now I'll look at my notes for a second. Because I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I grew up in the 50s. That was after World War II. So it was starting to change then in Brome, in the Eastern Townships. A lot of men had to work off farm. 30 cows that was used to be considered a big herd, but it didn't make it anymore, right? Anyway, it was more and more difficult. And finally, in '64, they lost the milk quota. I believe it came here. But after World War II, agricultural practices began moving towards larger, more specialized and mechanized farms, which was what we talked about before. And I'm seeing a trend now, going to the Canadian Organic Growers Eco Farm Day in Cornwall. That's 33 years they've been running that now. And seeing all kinds of young people who are, and also traditional farmers are there too. And people like Paul Meldrum, who who interviewed your grandfather, of course, on Regional Contact, and became the head of the herd at MacDonald College. He revived that herd into a champion herd again. But anyway, but there seems to be this growing trend among people. It reminds me of kind of the early 60s with Rachel Carson and The Silent Spring, where all of a sudden a lot of people, Walter Rodale, and we heard about the Nearings and hunting the wild asparagus, and there was a kind of a movement that seemed to start then. And anyway, but it was a hard fight. But these days, you talk about these people and they come out and learn this stuff, right? And they have a chance. There's an opportunity perhaps to rent some land and everything. But how big is this movement? I think it's global, but maybe I think
it's growing. I don't think it's huge, but I think it's there, which is good. And I think we need to continue to feed that fire. and give people opportunities, which we're obviously focused on. Why would a farm be interested in education? Well, we feel that part of what we have to do is grow new farmers, right? Doesn't matter if we grow crops, livestock, whatever. If we're not growing new farmers, we're not being regenerative, right?
Yes, of course.
Right, because if you don't have somebody to take over what you've made, what's the sense of doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, I think there's a lot of people there's a lot of, they use the term conventional, which bothers me because it's, petrochemical is not conventional. Conventional is historically, was organic. But I think there's a lot of those farmers that are just not totally happy with the system. I think and if you want to read a good book, it's Gabe Brown's Dirt to Soil. And he's been in the regenerative path now for 25 years, but he goes through what he lived through to actually put him on the path. And I think it really resonates with people. I've had a couple people read the book, and it does resonate with people. And I think if we can get some farmers to read that, but The problem is like the system that it's very difficult to change. Like don't discount I'm sure there's lots of farmers out there that have thought about it or would consider it but it's very difficult to change. The whole system is it's a system, right? And so it's very challenging to move away from that. From a financial point of view, from a comfort level point of view, from a land ownership point of view, like it's this you have to get out of this constant drive to keep expanding, right? Like this, like you need to be able to do more off of the same land that you have, right? So that's where Salatin is great. He calls about stacking enterprises, right? So it's not taking a corn crop off an acre. It's okay raising cattle on that acre. It's raising chickens on that and having sheep on it and goats and wildflowers or whatever else you can grow, right? That's the whole idea, is get as many revenue streams as you can, which, that diversity protects you from a lot of different things. It protects you from crop failures. You have a bad year with wildflowers, well, you still got sheep. But you have these multiple revenue streams where right now where our agricultural industry is actually very fragile. Because any type of large failure is going to be catastrophic, right? And people don't understand the potential for a large event. It's happened before.
You're talking about drought,
the dirty 30s, right? Like,
yes.
People don't think that can happen, but I think Mother Nature might show you differently. Right?
Well, we had some record heat here just
this last couple of days.
Yeah, it's been. Now, the small farmers, mixed farmers like yourself, there was that problem about getting their products to market. And, you can set up at the Maxville Farmers Market or here in Alexandria or even in Ottawa, but then you're off the farm and everything. You've done something else. You're selling farm gate. You have a full shop.
Yep.
Right on the premises, right on the farm. And what are you selling out of those multiple freezers in that?
So we have all of our products available. We have, as well as other products, we have, we sell our eggs there, of course. So all of our frozen meats, so beef, pork, duck, chicken, turkey, sheep, goat. Then we do our maple syrup.
In your grandfather's bush?
Yeah. And then we have Gibbs Honey. We sell their products as well because we have a partnership with them, which is kind of unique because my grandfather used to have bees, and he used to sell his honey
to Gibbs,
to the two uncles of Russell's. So it's kind of neat. So we have these these Gibbs apiary honey tins in our store. So
very cool.
But yeah, no, the idea for us is that we've tried the markets and stuff like that. It's a lot of work and effort. It takes us away from the farm. Anytime we go away from the farm, it's usually not a good thing. So we encourage people to come out. We want people to come, and we want people to see where their food is growing. We think it's actually beneficial for people to come out and reconnect with nature, spend some time on the farm, see how things are going.
You've had some big open houses there too.
We've had lots of open houses and different events. We've done rotational grazing seminars. We've hosted Alice. We've hosted the Raisin River Conservation Authority. We've had the Ecological Farmers Association of Ontario. We've had the Ontario Sheep Farmers District, the local districts come out. So yeah, we have a kind of an open door policy. The idea is to share information, right, and share knowledge, and so that more people can see how different things are done.
You don't have much time, but I know you do public speaking as well. You spoke recently in this spring in Van Cleek Hill. Who did you speak in front of?
Yeah, so that was there was a screening of so there's actually this is another if people want to find out more about regenerative agriculture, there's Kiss the Ground is the original film, and then Common Ground was the second one. So there was a screening of Common Ground, and the local group that put it on asked me to come, and because it's about regenerative farming, they said, "Hey, let's have a regenerative farmer there." So I went and was basically their guest speaker after the film screening. So it was really good. Lots of great questions. Very interesting to see. They had a full house.
How many people were there?
40 some people.
Oh, good.
So it was good. And again, that's another film I think people should watch. So there's lots of great resources.
And repeat the title again for people.
Common Ground.
Common Ground.
Yeah.
So. And a number of years ago, you spoke at the Canadian Organic Growers Eco Farm Day in Cornwall, and the subject of your talk at that time was the crushing need for another local abattoir here to serve small farmers and small producers like you. What happened with that?
Well, we haven't seen any new abattoirs, that's for sure. I don't think we will, given the current government regulations and everything. It's even hard for the existing ones to stay in business, so we have to support them as much as we can and keep them going and support them in their efforts to keep the government, basically not to over-regulate them out of business, right?
Because it's moving more and more to huge production.
Yeah, they really, I think, there's just a lot of bureaucracy for them. And so like the government, they talk about, this interprovincial trade, stuff like that. And I haven't seen anything. We're coming up on Canada Day. Mark Carney promised us we're going to have interprovincial trade. Just easy peasy.
I thought there was, I remember Frank Drouin, the MP, coming up to meet you at the farm. There's no movement at all for a new abattoir at all. There's still there
was supposed to be one. There was kind of an announcement about it, and it just never went anywhere. So it is a shame. So because there is a need for it. Although the one challenge we have now too is a lot of the local beef herds. They're not actually shipping to the abattoir right now because the price is so high. They're sending it to the sale barn. They can get just as much money going to the sale barn as they can selling it to put in someone's freezer. So that is the challenge too. So which is going to be a problem because a lot of people relied on that local beef that they could buy from their neighbor, their friend, their friend of a friend or whatever, right? And a lot of that beef is just not going to be available this year because it's going to market.
My goodness. Now, right now, how many head of cattle do you have in that herd?
We're over 200 and some right now. 220.
Can you describe a little bit about the reasons behind why you are moving these cattle from pasturage to pasturage?
Yeah, so we do rotational grazing, so we move every day. Sometimes we can get up there, if we get good at it, we're doing twice a day, but the idea is to keep the animals moving so that we only want them to eat about a third of the grass. Trample the rest, right? Because that's basically feeding the soil, creating more soil, right? We want to make soil. So, but how do you do that? Well, you got to have the microbes. Well, the good thing is you have cattle; they're just a big microbe factory, right?
Yeah,
comes out the back end every day, and just watch you don't step in it. But so that's why we do that, and that basically it increases our capacity, right? So when we first started, we couldn't have as big a herd because our land didn't have the capacity. We're also learning more about, the interdynamics between, so we have multi-species in the animal world. We're using different species. We have, chickens, getting the nitrogen from them.
And you move them around as well.
The chickens move every day as well, yeah. The sheep move every day, goats, everything moves every day.
Do your laying hens move?
They move every couple of days. It's a little harder to move them, but we move them as well.
Goodness, how much fowl do you have on the farm right now? I noticed a large new flock.
So we're part of the artisanal Chicken Farmers of Ontario artisanal program, which is a great program. We really like it, and it's from a supply management point of view, it's probably one of the more forward-thinking in Canada. They've done a great job of allowing people a way in to the industry. So it gets them experience, and they have several or a couple different case studies where they actually have had people start, family flock, artisanal niche, and get into their quota system. So it is a method for young farmers to grow and do that. So I commend them for sure. They definitely are a little bit.
And the name of the program again is?
It's the artisanal chicken farmers. So it's an artisanal program. So we're allowed to grow up to 3,000 birds.
Okay, that's really great.
Yeah.
You have the laying heads, and then you have, what breed are your meat hens?
They're white rocks. They're just the
Oh, yeah,
standard,
okay.
because that's about all you can get, really. You know, there is a few other ones now, but there's that's what everybody's used to.
And also, you've expanded to other properties. For instance, I know that you're doing some grazing up at Stonehouse
Yeah,
Vinery, and
yeah. So at the vineyard in Lochiel, Stonehouse, we put our sheep there. So we use the sheep for maintenance in the vineyard, and so that's beneficial for them because they don't have to expend that fossil fuels to
mow
do
it.
that, mow it. Puts fertilizer back down. It's a good positive interaction. The sheep love it there. Yeah, and of course it gives something for people to see as well. Whenever they go, they get to see the sheep. So.
And what breed of sheep do you have?
So we're using hair sheep just because there doesn't seem to be a market for wool, and I just going through the job of shearing sheep is not sheep shearer is not in. No.
That's quite an art, quite a craft.
Yeah. Well, I have trimmed some of our Dorpers up. So we have Dorpers and Katahdins and Dorper Katahdin crosses.
Not too many people raising goats, but goat meat is in demand. And how many goats do you have now?
I think we're down about 15. It is more challenging to raise goats, and they're just a lot difficult to deal with. Long term, I'm not sure if we'll stay in goats, but
they're Houdinis.
They are. They are.
Can get out of any cage, any fencing.
Yeah, any area. Yeah. So long term, I'm not sure, but the sheep the sheep was probably one of the bigger surprises. How much I enjoy them, and how much we like them, and once you get working with them, they're pretty neat animals.
And I think you have someone who works on the farm occasionally who has 2 Anatolian dogs.
Yeah.
And apparently, he told me that he'll be living in a trailer perhaps up there with his dogs just to keep an eye on the sheep.
Yeah, we had another property that we're looking at that it's a concern because it's and he's actually, again, he's another person that wants to look at farming.
Yes.
So there's all these folks, like these young folks, so you got to help them find a way in, right? And so he has a passion for animals. Like he's great with animals, so he wants to get his own flock and basically start to do that, start to raise some sheep out. So
those 2 dogs, by the way, he saw advertised in an Ottawa newspaper. Somebody had rescued them from the Middle East.
Yeah.
And he went up there, and she couldn't handle it at all. These are huge, guard sheep, very friendly dogs, but they're specifically bred to take care of sheep and make sure no coyotes.
Yeah. No, they're definitely bred for that. So.
And I'll get back to the coyotes. People like to hear about that. Is it a big problem?
Yeah, we've had coyote pressure, but we have the dogs, so that sort of helps. And then we use around our chickens, we use a donkey. So we have a guard donkey, and so he's fenced in around them. And since we started using him, our losses have gone down significantly.
He does the job.
He does the job, yeah. We've learned, too, how we set it up. It's a lot to do with how we set him up, but it's worked really well.
I just have to mention again that driving by your farm last week, I noticed those cattle had their noses deep in this lush pasturage. They have a good life, these cattle.
Yeah, well, that's what they're meant to do, right? Cattle are meant to eat grass.
Yeah, but it's not short grass.
No, it's not.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah, you can see it was over their backs sometimes.
Yeah, anyway, that's a beautiful sight. Now, some years ago, at your auntie's 25 acres up the road and MacGillivray, it hadn't been plowed in generations. And I remember you wanted to recover some of that seed and winnow it or something. What happened there?
Well, we're trying to get native grasses. So we had a program, we've put in native grasses there. We want to get native grasses growing, get a lot of those stuff that you would have seen in the region, especially along like a riverbank like that.
Oh yes.
So because it's a
right
great
on Spring Creek.
It's a great habitat for birds, right? There are a lot of birds there, a lot of insects as well. So having native grasses there was one of the reasons we went ahead with that project and put in native grasses. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's plowed now, but your first crop, I understand, is going to be mustard. Is that right?
No.
I'm sorry.
Native grasses. It'll be
native grasses.
Yeah,
okay.
native grasses.
Okay. I I just remember my father with mustard for nematodes or
Yeah.
something. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll look again at my my notes here.
Mhm.
We've talked a little bit about some organizations, and they've grown in the last 40 years or so, but you have mentioned a few. Where does that fit in? For instance, Canadian Organic Growers or any other?
Yeah, so the Canadian Organic Growers, they're a great organization. They basically represent organics across Canada. We're members of I think we're still members of the Canadian Organic Growers. The one that we do spend quite a bit of time and effort on is the Ecological Farmers Association of Ontario. We're really, again, it kind of meets with our ethos with respect to they're about farmer-led education, research, and stuff like that.
Is this online now?
Yeah, you can get it in. And so, and you don't have to be a farmer to be a member. So that's the other beauty of it. And they actually have a local representative. She actually,
like the old days.
yeah,
Your ag rep.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So actually, she doesn't live too far from Stonehouse.
Good.
Just down near Glen Samfield.
Who is that?
Angel. So I'll have to introduce you.
Yeah.
But great lady. But so we do a lot with them. We do Eastern Ontario Land Trust is something else we're passionate about, which is a group out of Anklekill that is looking at to preserve farmland. So, and then we're members of the National Farmers Union as well. So I sit on the land committee there for the provincial land committee as well as the national land committee. And we talk a lot and we're trying to figure out how to deal with this. A lot of the stuff we mentioned with respect to the corporate takeover of agriculture, because, you know, people are worried about Bill Gates, right? And everybody talks about Bill Gates owning farmland. We have corporations here in Canada there.
I think we have corporations here in Glengarry too.
Yeah. So. And the problem is whenever they consolidate that land, it's very difficult. So if they're gonna sell, right? So you get a 4,000 acre farm when they're gonna sell, right? Who's gonna buy 4,000 acres, right?
And how many millions of dollars will that be?
Right. Whereas, you know, a 100 acre farm, well, there's a couple of people can buy that, right? So.
You're also growing vegetables.
Yeah, we do we have our own vegetable garden, yeah. But it's in partnership again with Concordia.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah. So they're doing some research stuff there.
In season, will those vegetables be available for
purchase?
So
any excess and stuff, yeah, we put it in.
Wow.
But it's just it's a minor thing. It's not
your farm is kind of like a college as well.
Yeah.
Now,
we call it the Kirkview Academy.
It is an academy. It's so true. And I think what you're doing, along with your students and everything, but you yourself are constantly experimenting with new approaches. That came through with what you just said before. What's new this year, for instance, that you're trying?
Well, so last year we planted multi-species grass or forage pasture mix, and we're looking at that. I was really worried about how it was going to work, and it's worked fairly good. Just trying to improve on that. So just looking for ways to keep improving our systems, right? So we did bale grazing. That was one big thing.
What's that?
So in the winter, or in the fall, whenever you come out of the grazing field, you basically put bales out and you actually allow the cattle to, you either unroll them and graze them that way, or we do what we call in situ, which is you just drop the bale and let the cows eat it.
And that's, of course, your own. And
that's in the field, and that's in the field. So it leaves all the carbon there. So the manure stays there. Yeah. So
now, none of these cattle are finished. They're entirely grass fed, and
they're grass finished, right? So they're not finished with grain.
No,
we finish them on.
They're never put
grass,
in.
Yeah, they never see any grain.
And what are the benefits, health wise and otherwise, with grass fed beef?
So the grass fed definitely has different profiles from a nutrient point of view. It has different profiles from vitamins and minerals and that, and they have done studies on it. Conjugated linoleic acid, which is heart healthy. So the omega-3 to 6 ratios are more in line. they're also now starting to find, there's Dr. Stephen Van Vliet. He's actually doing studies on this with they're basically looking at the nutritional density and the nutritional profiles of grass-fed versus other more
And
conventional.
his name again? So
Stephen Van Vliet, I think it is. It's Dr. Stephen Van Vliet.
Van Vliet from the States?
He's from the States, yeah. So, yeah, great.
Yeah, and all the other livestock as well is grass finished fed.
Yeah,
sheep and goats and
Well, even so we do turkeys, and turkeys will get about 40% of their diet from foraging, which is cool. Chickens are only about 20%, but and you really do notice the difference with the turkeys.
I notice your eggs when I go to break them compared to other eggs.
Yes,
they're pretty hard to crack.
Yeah.
What's the input for that?
It's basically seashells.
Seashells, yeah, putting back.
Yeah, and then but the other thing is you'll notice our yolks are very, very.
Yes, they are. Oh, your eggs are very good. And when you first started off, you were very interested in Tamworth pigs, the English small red pigs. And how is the hog production going now?
We've backed off our hog production quite a bit over the years. Like we were up at 200 pigs at one time.
I remember.
Well, we've backed right off. Well, first of all, the Tamworths are a great breed. We love them, but they take about 12 to 14 months to get to carcass weight, which is too long. It's very tough to make a profit on it. So we started crossing with Hereford and Berkshire, and doing the crossing, and then we can get it down to about 8 months, get them to a good finish. Still good porks. We like it. We like the animals. They're very docile, friendly.
They're biddable.
Yeah. So that's where we're at now, and the genetics we have now are pretty good. We're pretty happy with them.
And they're outdoors as well.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I remember seeing little gangs, like the little piglets and the teenagers, and the little piglets would run under a tractor, and then the teenagers would be acting out. It really is Lassie's farm up there when you don't have to work it. Also, years ago, not many people found their way up the lane. When did you open the shop? When did you get the farm gate?
So I guess that we really focused on it about 4 or 5 years ago. We really started that. We were thinking about doing markets. We tried a few markets and stuff, and it was just a lot of effort. You're constantly trying to get everything organized to get there, and it was a challenge. So whereas more focusing on, we still do some markets. We have some select ones that we do, but more focused on having people come to the farm, see where their food's produced, come and visit us.
It's a wonderful experience to drive.
Yeah, we have a lot of, we definitely have a good customer base, and they like coming to the farm, and they like the one thing that people always say is, well, every time I come here, something's different, right?
Yeah.
Because the cattle are in a different spot or something.
And every time I go there are people from elsewhere, from Ottawa, Ile-Perrot. You have some customers.
We have a lot of customers out of Montreal. It's funny that we actually get a fair amount of our business comes out of Montreal.
Now, was this word of mouth, or how did they find out about you?
Word of mouth, definitely a lot of word of mouth. And then the other one is Google. Yeah, so people use Google.
Do you design that website?
Google. The website? No, well, actually, I helped design it, yeah. We had someone do it, but I've actually redone it a little bit myself lately.
It's nice, and the photographs are so evocative, and it really is like that up there. Let me see if I have anything else here. We talked before about the environmental philosophy of sustainable agriculture, and I'll just read this. It includes the intrinsic value of nature, sustainability, of course, biodiversity, you're doing that, preservation, ecological balance, intergenerational equity. What does that mean?
Intergenerational equity, so I think that's probably hinting on to the fact that a lot of people are concerned about putting the debt load up, forcing kids to buy the farm at the current market price. And so that creates this gap, right? Because when those folks bought the farm, parents bought the farm, it was a lot less value, right? And so then when they're selling it to their kids, they're, if they're trying to ask at market price, that definitely has a That's, I think, is what that's alluding to, is that intergenerational aspect. And you know, I'm not saying every farm family is doing that, but there are some doing that. But there's a lot of them that are not. They're figuring out ways to make it work, and figuring out ways to be able to transition the farm to the next generation. So we have a lot of innovative farmers in this region, and it's a lot of our neighbors and stuff are great at. It's great to see that they're working at figuring out how to get their kids and keep their kids involved in agriculture. And doing what they have to do to make that happen, right? And that's great to see.
Now, there's another thing that you emphasize with Kirkview, and that's your connection to the community. And it's not just Christmas with Santa where 500 people show up. I mean, that was so beautiful. But how do you relate to community, and how does the community relate to you? And what do you want to see?
So I think, you know, like, we're definitely outside the norm as far as farming in the farming community, but everyone's respectful. I think they're actually inquisitive sometimes. They like to see what we're doing, try to figure out how we're doing what we're doing. They're very respectful. Like, you know, everyone's very respectful of having us doing what we're doing. That's the big thing.
And you've got a lot of local customers as well. Yeah,
we do have a lot of local customers as well. Yes, a lot of local people supporting us, which is great.
Do you sell in any stores like the Glengarry Market?
Yeah, so we have an agreement with Amanda, so we do sell to her. We also sell to 2 restaurants. There's Ferme Beauté Bin. It's that new cafe that opened in Williamstown. So they sell our products.
And what is it called again?
Ferme Beauté Bin.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah, Sylviane and Emmerich.
Right, and she's a wonderful baker. Or maybe,
he is.
He's the baker,
he's
French,
the baker.
but
Yes.
he's from France. He trained as a baker, and my goodness, the bread is... The Christmas market in Maxville last year, or maybe the year before, she was set up, and I saw a man out of breath coming through the aisles, right? He was so worried she was sold out. His wife had sent him back to get another loaf. Very beautiful bread.
Yeah, no, great people. So, and they're very, very good about supporting local.
That's great.
And Amanda's great at supporting local. Like, she supports us, but she's really great at supporting local. And
when were you able to get the organic certification?
So we're still not right there, because basically, if you take a look at it, most customers, that's why we want people to come out and see what we do. Everything we do meets the organic standards. We can be fully certified. The challenge we have now is, when we first started, certification was during COVID.
Oh, yes.
So we went through that whole thing, and then, that became a challenge. But we're now at a size where it's a significant cost to do.
I know you're pretty committed, because one time you couldn't find, it had run out, a local seller of organic chicken feed, and you got in your truck and drove nonstop to Toronto, I understand, and back?
We had to. Yeah, we've had that happen. Yeah, so the challenge.
No cheating, eh?
No,
never cheating.
No, because you know, in the when you're in the transition phase, you can use non-GMO products and stuff, but when you go to fully organic, you're fully organic, and so everything we use is organic.
Philosophically, you're already there.
Yeah, we have everything. We always show people. The biggest thing is, come and see what we're doing. Right?
Come and see what we're doing.
That's what we say. We have an open door policy. Come in. See, that's actually Salatin has that as well, right?
Oh, it's wonderful. Philosophy. I just love it, and there's lots of stuff to look at out there. And listen, I got to get back to China. I don't know if it's only China, although I understand on your travels you ate some interesting forms of protein. What did you try?
Oh, lots of different stuff. In China, the thing about in China is that when they say nose to tail, right, eating everything, they eat everything. So it was definitely interesting. Definitely interesting.
What did you eat that was unusual?
Well, the one that they got me with was bull penis.
Oh.
Yeah. They call it beef tendon, and then you find out what it was actually. And then
tasty?
No, chewy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, and all different types of sea creatures and stuff from the ocean, and all different types of bugs and everything, scorpions, all different kinds of stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Is this about the end, do you think? Ellen?
I would say so.
Yeah?
Yeah, you're
I
good.
just enjoyed this so much. Thank you. I'm not very articulate when it comes to what you're doing. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about organic farming from my own parents' experience, but this is something different. This is it's a, may I say, it's an intellectual and a philosophical process. It's it goes deep, Mike. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, I do think that once you see what you can do by working with nature, right, and working with animals, like Cora likes to talk about the cattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
A cow will actually come to the corner of the paddock. If she's lost her calf, she will come to the corner of the paddock and tell us. And then she will walk and tell you where she thought she lost it. And then so we go find it and we bring it back.
You did that last week, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Did that cow come to the fence?
Yeah.
And another thing, I think even though you have several hundred cattle, but you seem to know the story of every cow.
Yeah, yeah.
And every sheep and every they all have a story.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do because but you have to respect them, right?
That's it.
You have to respect
you
have to respect the nature of the animal, right?
Yeah.
That's why we don't feed them grain because that's not what they're meant to eat.
Yes. Thank you very much for coming.
No, this has been great.
And being the very first interview in Over the Fence, which
so only upwards and onwards from here.
Yeah, and that was I kind of got it mixed up. I thought maybe probably it was Across the Fence, but I think it's Over the Fence, and it's a tribute really to Velma Franklin, who wrote a series of columns under that title for the Glengarry News. And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and she was an amazing woman, a good friend of mine. I miss her so much. We used to take country drives on Thursdays. And even though she wasn't from here, she was from northern Quebec, where her father was a mining engineer, which is why she was so into skins. She used to hang out with young native girls, and pictures of her when she was young, right up there with, living the life up in northern Quebec. And her house was full of furs. Of course, she was a weaver and everything, but she was also somebody who really believed in the type of farming that you're doing. Mm. And she knew every single farm along the way, who, even though she wasn't from here, she knew their names, and she knew what they did, and she knew where their children were.
Yeah.
That's Velma.
Well, anyway, this has been great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you.